Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Text 23. Prayers by Queen Kunti. Yatha Rishikesha kalena devaki Kamsena rudhati chiram sucharpita Vimochitaham cha sahatmaja vivo Tvayaiva natena muhurvipadganat Yatha Rishikesha kalena devaki Kamsena rudhati chiram sucharpita Vimochitaham cha sahatmaja vivo Tvayaiva natena muhurvipadganat. Gentlemen. Ladies. Yatha Rishikesha kalena devaki Kamsena rudhati chiram sucharpita Vimochitaham cha sahatmaja vivo Tvayaiva nathena muhurvipadganat Yatha Rishikesha kalena devaki Kamsena rudhati chiram sucharpita Vimochitaham cha sahatmaja vivo Tvayaiva nathena muhurvipadganat Yatha, as it were, Rishikesha, the master of the senses, Kalena, by the envious, Devaki, the mother of Sri Krishna, Kamsena, by King Kamsa, Rudha, imprisoned, Atichiram, for a long time, Shuchar Pita, distressed, Vimochita, released, Ahamcha, also myself, Sahatmaja, a along with my children. Vibho, O Great One, Tvaya, Tvaya Eva, by your Lordship, Nathena, as the protector, Muhu, constantly, Vipat Ghanat, from a series of dangers. O Rishikesha, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious king Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Devaki, the mother of Krishna and sister of King Kamsa, was put into prison along with her husband Vasudeva, because the envious king was afraid of being killed by Devaki's 8th son, Krishna. He killed all the sons of Devaki who were born before Krishna, but Krishna escaped the danger of child slaughter because he was transferred to the house of Nanda Maharaj, Lord Krishna's foster father. Kunti Devi, along with her children, was also saved from a series of dangers, but Kunti Devi was shown far more favor because Lord Krishna did not save the other children of Devaki, whereas he saved the children of Kunti Devi. This was done because Devaki's husband, Vasudeva, was living, whereas Kunti Devi was a widow, and there was none to help her except Krishna. The conclusion is that Krishna endows more favor to a devotee who is in greater dangers. Sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers because in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. The more the attachment is there for the Lord, the more success is there for the devotee. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvai Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindurgaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yatha Rishikesha Kalena Devaki Kamsena Rudhati Chiram Shucharpita Vimochitaham cha Sahatmaja Vivo Tayaiva Natena Muhurvipadgana. O Rishikesh, master of the senses and lord of lords, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and in distress by the envious King Kamsa, and me and my children from a series of constant dangers. So we are so fortunate to be able to have these prayers of Queen Kunti, which were spoken directly from her mouth and directly to Sri Krishna Bhagavan. Not only do we get to hear her prayers of full devotion and realization, but we also get to get a glimpse of her understanding of who Krishna is, with philosophical understanding and with deep realization. Mother Queen Kunti she begins her prayers right after Krishna saves Queen Kunti and the Pandavas yet from another danger. Here she says that Krishna is saving her and her children from a series of constant dangers. And she begins these prayers right after Ashwatthama's Brahmastra was thrown to Uttara's womb. Krishna was about to leave to Dwarka. He was getting on his chariot. And then in comes in Uttara, the wife of Abhimanyu, running to Sri Krishna in fear, asking for his shelter. And so Krishna, like always, he does his magic, protects his devotees. And after this incident, Queen Kunti takes the opportunity to begin to offer prayers to Sri Krishna. And now we have gotten to the 6th prayer of Queen Kunti. But before diving deeper into this prayer and to the purport that Srila Prabhupada gave us, I would just like to give a synopsis of the prayers, just to show how Queen Kunti, how she's giving so much information about Krishna in her prayers. And not only is she giving an offering of love, but she's also instructing us how to understand Krishna and how to pray to Krishna. In her first prayer, she immediately establishes Krishna's position as Purusham Tvadyam. First of all, he's a supreme person, and Tvadyam, he's an original person, he's the original. Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adhyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. Again, he's the original person. So immediately, Queen Kunti is establishing Krishna. He is beyond any Guna avatar, Purusha avatar. And then she says, Ishvara Parama Prakrite. First, he's the controller, and then Parama Prakrite. He's beyond all material cosmos. He's beyond the material. So immediately she separates him from us, from Jiva Tattva. And actually, by understanding that he is beyond the material world, he's actually also separated from any other tattva, Shiva tattva, even Vishnu tattva. Why? Because Brahma, for example, Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu. Brahma, he is a post, and he is completely immersed in the creation of the material worlds. We know Shiva from the Brahma Samhita Kshiram Yathadadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga, that he has this mixed potency, where he's not like milk like Krishna, but yogurt. So he's mixed because he has also this duty connected to the material world. And Vishnu, of course, he is aloof of it all, but at the same time, he is part of the process of the material creations. As we know, the process from Lord Balaram, the Chaturvyuha, then Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and so on. So immediately, she's putting Krishna in a very special position. She even mentions, you are existing both within and without everything. Right? Ekopya sarachayitum jagadanda koti yashakti rasti jagadanda chayad yadanta andanta rasta paramanu chayantarasta. He's within every atom. Krishna is within every atom, and he is all pervasive. He's everywhere. Then in the next verse, she also extends to this point that he is beyond our limited sense perception. He is, right, Parama Prakriti. He's beyond the material world, and he is not easily attainable. It's not that God is cheap, Krishna is cheap. She even mentions, you are invisible to the foolish observer, exactly as an actor dressed as a player is not recognized. Then in her next prayer, she begins to touch up a little bit on Krishna's mercy, on Krishna's personality, for his reason for descending, for coming. She says that you yourself has descended to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service. And we know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Paritranaya Sadhuna, right? That he comes to deliver the pious. So Queen Kunti, already in her first three prayers, she establishes Krishna's position as the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then gives us the reason of why he comes, to propagate the transcendental science of devotional service. Then she gives a little bit of a personal feel to the prayers, where we get to understand where Krishna is coming from. Srila Prabhupada, he always mentioned that it is very important, Janme karma chame divyam, right? Krishna says to Arjuna that simply by knowing, by understanding my birth and my transcendental activities, you can become liberated. And actually in the purport of this verse, Srila Prabhupada, he mentions, in the purport of Teachings for Queen Kunti is a little bit extended, the purport of this verse. And Srila Prabhupada, he says, we must understand these two important things, the nature of his appearance and his activities, because he's mentioning how Queen Kunti is, so kindly letting us know. And so Srila Prabhupada mentions we should know, why does he come, how does he come, how he acts, and what is his position. So we see that Queen Kunti is already establishing his position. She's establishing why he comes. And then how he comes, he's accepted parents. In her fourth prayer, she says, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda. She also mentions Nanda Maharaj, as Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the foster father. And then she also mentions, and the other coward men of Vrindavan, and mentions the place of where Krishna is coming from. So by the fourth prayer of Queen Kunti, she's established so many things, even to the point of Krishna's personal abode, Sri Vrindavan Dham. Then in her fifth prayer, she gives a little bit description of Krishna through her personal experience. By seeing Krishna, she begins to describe his form. She says, my respectful obeisances are unto you, O Lord, whose abdomen is marked with a depression like a lotus flower, who are always decorated with garlands of lotus flowers, whose glance is as cool as the lotus, and whose feet are engraved with lotuses. So she is, with her experience, we are getting a description of Krishna, a personal description, that Queen Kunti herself, she sees the glance of Sri Krishna Bhagavan as cool as a lotus. So we can imagine what made Mother Kunti think of his glance and how she compared it to the coolness of a lotus. And then we arrive in today's prayer of Queen Kunti, where she's giving a testimonial that Krishna is saving her from a series of constant dangers. She mentions the activities, right? Janme karma chame divyam, the activities in the birth of Krishna. So she's mentioned the birth, now the activities of Krishna. She's mentioning an activity even before she was really acquainted with Krishna. She says, you have released your mother Devaki, who was long imprisoned and distressed by the envious King Kamsa. And then she mentioned her personal testimonial, that you have saved me and my children from a series of constant dangers. So what I thought was interesting in Srila Prabhupada's purport of this verse was that in the beginning, he kind of compares the situation between Kunti and Devaki. Right? He says, but Kunti Devi was shown far more favor because Lord Krishna did not save the other children of Devaki. I thought that was interesting because we know the backstory, we know the story of Devaki's children, that there's a story behind it. There's a reason that Krishna, he does everything. With one stride, he does many things. So Devaki's children weren't saved, but we know because they were cursed, the sons of Marichi, and they offended Brahma, and then, so on and so forth. They have this whole, and even then, at the end, Lord Krishna brought the children back, and Devaki was able to see them and enjoy their association for a short time. But still, this reason is given that because Lord Krishna did not save the other children of Devaki, whereas he saved the children of Kunti Devi. And then, but Srila Prabhupada gives a further reason to that. He says this was done because Devaki's husband Vasudeva was living, whereas Kunti Devi was a widow, and there was no one to help her except Krishna. So, also I love reading Srila Prabhupada's purpose because every sentence just impulses you to think. Because to think more, I'm like, okay, according to the Vedic tradition, if the husband isn't there, then the children take care of the mother, right? That is. And Kunti Devi, she's surrounded by not 5 ordinary children. She's surrounded by 5 children that are like half demigods. So I was thinking, then, what was the extra importance that Krishna gave of her not being, and some thoughts came to mind, maybe showing the importance of the role of a husband. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he is the ability in man. And maybe one of the abilities in man is that we represent Krishna by protecting our wives. So, and in this sense, since the husband is not there, then Kunti was in greater danger. The conclusion is that Krishna endows more favor to a devotee who is in greater dangers. So that wasn't the integral part. This is just leading up to the points that Srila Prabhupada is making. And so he says that, Srila Prabhupada says that sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers because in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. So this makes one think, meditate on the reason why maybe Krishna puts his devotees or people in these precarious situations. And Srila Prabhupada is giving the reason, which is very simple. Because if you're not attached to Krishna, then you'll simply be attached to something else. It's really quite that simple. You can be attached to the sense gratification, or you can be attached to devotional service. We know with the story of Bharat Maharaj that he was even at the stage of bhava, where he was experiencing tears of love coming from his eyes for Krishna. But even then, he got attached to a deer. So sometimes Krishna puts us in this condition of helplessness, so we become more attached to Krishna. Because if we don't hold on, not only do we have to become attached to Krishna, we have to hold on to that attachment. It's an everyday effort, it's an everyday meditation. Because easily we can let go of the lotus feet of Krishna, and then we'll hold on to something else. If we give a little bit of space of something else to go in our grasp, then it's easy to become selfish. It's easy to become self-centered, and then put Krishna as second and put ourselves as a priority. So that's why we have to be careful of our association. We have to be careful of what we think about, what we meditate about. That verse in Bhagavad Gita, right? Chapter is 262. Dhyayato vishayam pumsam sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kama krodho vijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment lust develops, and from lust anger arises. And from anger, the bewilderment of memory, delusion, etc. And then what happens? One falls back down into the material pool. So if we're not careful, then it will be easy to be attached to something else. This funny example I heard this example a few days ago. That, when you're traveling in an Indian train, if you've ever traveled in one before, they get full, very full, so full, completely jam-packed. And you'll be in the smallest space, and then someone else comes in to sit next to you. And somehow you make the space.
No problem.
Somehow you just scoot over, you make the space, sit next to you, okay. So then the example is given that you're in this jam-packed train, and then a skinny fellow comes, and then he's looking next to you, and so you make a little bit of space, and somehow he squeezes in. And then he nods over, and then his wife comes. Right? And then you have to, make the husband and wife should travel together, and then you make a little bit of more space, then the wife sits down. Then the wife nods over, and then the two children come. And then now all the family must stay together, and then you're at the edge of your seat, and now, the family's together, okay, we're all together, we made space. But then the kids, then they call, they say, oh, grandma, come. And then the hefty grandmother comes. And so I was thinking, what does this story have to do with, with Maya or attachments? And the example was given was that because if you give Maya just a little bit of space, she can take over. Now, there's a saying that, I'm here, these egotistical people, they say, I'm here to, not to take part, but to take over. So Maya, she can take over very easily. Yeah, if she wants to take part, if she were to take part in our devotional service, in our development of Krishna consciousness, then we have to show sincerity. Then that Mahamaya will become Yoga Maya. That will become an addition to our spiritual life, will be support in our spiritual life. But Srila Prabhupada has made it so easy for us to stay engaged in devotional service, to stay absorbed in Krishna consciousness. And he's so merciful with this one pastime that he was giving a class, and he was really taking to home the point that we have to be cent % Krishna consciousness to go back to Godhead, 100%. And he was being heavy through this class that we have to be 100%. And after the class, everyone was in a serious mood, looking down. The devotees, just received a tall order. And as if Srila Prabhupada could read the mind of the devotees, he saw that it was, and then he said, 90%, and you can still go back to Godhead. Then he gets up from the Vyasasana, and he gets up and he's getting his things ready to go, and then he still sees that, 90%, 90% is 90%. So he says, even 80%, and you can still go back to Godhead. So he's just getting ready to leave, and his chatter is dragging a little bit, and then he flips his chatter, and how Srila Prabhupada would walk with his head up, and then he looks at the devotees and says, even 70%, and you'll go back to Godhead, and then he walks out. But even 70% is a lot, right? But the idea is that the desire is to be 100%. And Srila Prabhupada's mercy is telling us that even if we're 70%, we still have a chance. But we have to, we're not giving attention or focus to that 30%, obviously. Srila Prabhupada is giving attention to do 100%, but he's being merciful. Just try. Why? Because if not, then this materialistic propensity will trickle into our lives. It can trickle in just as with the example of the train ride. If you give a little bit of space, then it can just take over and take more of your life, take more of your energy. And Srila Prabhupada, he mentions about this materialistic propensity in the last paragraph of the purport in Teachings of Queen Kunti. Srila Prabhupada says, because he's referring to the materialistic propensity of Dhritarashtra, who, he wasn't given the kingdom, his brother left, and now, yes, my sons should have the kingdom, and this envious mentality. So Srila Prabhupada, he says, this is the materialistic propensity. One thinks, I shall be happy, my sons will be happy, my community will be happy, my nation will be happy. This is extended selfishness. No one is thinking of Krishna and how Krishna will be happy. Rather, everyone is thinking in terms of his or her own happiness. How shall I be happy? How will my children, my community, my society, and my nation be happy? Everywhere we shall find this. Everyone is struggling for existence, not thinking of how Krishna will be happy. Krishna consciousness is very sublime. We should try to understand it from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and try to engage our senses for the service of the master of the senses. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. Then we shall actually be happy. So I like how Srila Prabhupada brings it very personal here, because it is easy to think about our own desires, our family, and then justify those responsibilities of taking care of oneself, taking care of one's family, to put Krishna behind. And the verse that he quotes, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam, it's from this verse, Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tat parat vena nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchate Sarva Upadi vinirmuktam. Oh. And the translation is wonderful. Bhakti or devotional service means engaging all our senses in the service of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Master of all the senses. When the spirit soul renders service unto the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So I'd like to read that last. He says that there's two side effects. One is freed from all material designations, and one's senses are purified simply by being employed in the service of the Lord. So that's why it is very appropriate here that Devaki says, Yata Rishikesha Kalena Devaki. She calls Krishna Rishikesh, the master of the senses, the one who alleviates us, frees us from the miseries of our senses. He can also put us in that condition, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning. Why? To make us in a more helpless condition, so that we become more attached to the Lord. Because why? Because we're putting our senses, our sense gratification before Krishna. So Queen Kunti, she's seen Rishikesha, O master of the senses, the one who can give me this experience and the one who can take away this experience. And we chant to Govinda, right? Oh Govinda, Govinda. One of the meanings of Govinda is one who gives pleasure to the senses. And so we pray to Krishna, please appease my mind, please appease my senses so I can focus on pure devotional service unto you. Other than that, then, I'll be completely distracted. And we see examples of this, like the example of Ganjendra, the elephant. He was enjoying his material prowess. The description of him with all the female elephants, he was very powerful. But he was put into a situation where he was completely helpless. He was put into a situation where it's almost as if he had no other choice to surrender. He had to surrender. I mean, he could have surrendered to something else, but at least he had the impulse to surrender to Krishna. And we also see that sometimes Krishna will put his devotees in difficult situations, but also to glorify his devotees. We have the example, the closest example to home we have is Srila Prabhupada. I mean, we've heard how many times the stories of all the troubles and tribulations Srila Prabhupada had to do to preach. The heart attack, having no finances. And then even when he started, he had a stroke. He was paralyzed neck down or half the body. I don't remember the exact detail. But I was just listening to a pastime of Brahmananda Prabhu, where when Srila Prabhupada, when he was paralyzed, he couldn't continue to use the typewriter. He couldn't use it anymore because his left side was paralyzed at that point in time. And it so happened to be at that time they were trying to do the transcription. Actually, when he stopped doing the typewriting work, it happened to be that Gargamuni, he saw in a store that they were selling the dictaphone. He told Srila Prabhupada the idea, he liked it. They started that system, they were trying to transcribe, but it was very difficult for them to type. And it happened that at that specific moment, there was this one student who he wanted to work for an organization and get credits for university at the same time. And he chose ISKCON as the organization. And so he spoke with Brahmananda Prabhu, and Brahmananda asked him, so what do you do? And he said, well, actually, I'm a typist, and I transcribe. So Brahmananda Prabhu gave him the service. And just in that short period, he transcribed the whole Bhagavad Gita for Srila Prabhupada, Sri Upanishad, teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And so it's so amazing that in these instances, sometimes Krishna will put his devotee in a situation that helps the devotee. Maybe that situation, introducing the dictaphone so Srila Prabhupada could even do more seva. And then the boy finished, and actually it's interesting that he was never seen again. He just came, did the seva for Srila Prabhupada, and then and it's just Krishna works in this miraculous way, right? And at the same time, he does it to glorify the accomplishments of the devotee, to glorify the perseverance, the determination of the devotee, but also we don't know the internal relationship, the inner workings of the relationship of the devotee and Krishna. What is the humble mood of the devotee that's receiving these tribulations that Krishna is giving? Actually, just this morning, I saw a quote of Srila Prabhupada, a letter to Umapati. And he tells him, I came to your country completely in a helpless condition. And Krishna is so kind that he has picked up some serious students like you. And my only hope is that even if I die, these missionary activities will go on. So sometimes, through the mercy of the devotee, we are able to see the relationship of the devotee and Krishna, the inner dealings, the inner workings of what is going on. Like Brahmananda Prabhu also tells the pastime that where Rukmini Dwarkadish personally told Srila Prabhupada the deity spoke to Srila Prabhupada, telling him that he should also preach in India. So his guru told him to preach to the west, and Krishna told him to preach in India, in the east. So we get glimpses of through the mercy of these great devotees, that we get to see their mood. Like here, Srila Prabhupada is saying, I came in a helpless condition. And he's not taking any of the credit. He's saying, Krishna is giving me nice, serious students like you. And so we get to witness the humility in these great devotees. Or like Prahlad Maharaj. He's also a great example of being in a series of constant dangers, but Krishna always coming to the rescue. Right? I mean, he was they tried to assassinate Prahlad Maharaj many times, throwing him off cliffs, boiling oil, mad elephants, poisoning, so many different ways. But again and again, Prahlad Maharaj was victorious. But then one can contemplate, what is the mood? What was Prahlad Maharaj going through? That's a meditation. What was Prahlad Maharaj going through? What was his thought process? And in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we get a glimpse of Prahlad Maharaj's humility. Narada Muni, he's looking, he wants to find the greatest Vaishnava. And he's searching and searching. He's sent to Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva, tells him, whispers in his ears, actually Prahlad Maharaj, he's the greatest devotee. So then he goes and visits Prahlad Maharaj, and he hears all the glories that Lord Shiva is telling to that is telling about Prahlad Maharaj. So Narada Muni begins to glorify Prahlad Maharaj and give all the reasons of why he is worthy glorification and how he was such a special devotee to get special blessings of Lord Nrsimhadev. And he mentions many examples, many points. And it's amazing because the way Prahlad Maharaj responds, he responds and he addresses each glorification that Narada Muni gives, Prahlad Maharaj refutes. And he refutes each glorification in such a convincing way that as a reader, you're reading and you're like, you know what, Prahlad Maharaj, he has a point here. maybe he was, maybe, it was just mercy or this or, because he's so convinced. So we just get a glimpse of Prahlad Maharaj's humility. Who knows what he was thinking of during those series of constant dangers? Maybe he was thinking he was deserving of it. But just, it's so wonderful that we're able to dive into these deep and beautiful relationships of Krishna and his personal associates. So, but what comes to mind is with devotees like Prahlad Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, Queen Kunti. Because you may argue, you say, okay, but Gajendra, he was distracted. So that situation helped him. But then you wonder and you ask, but what about devotees who are already surrendered? They're giving everything to Krishna, 100%. They're already, Queen Kunti, she's giving everything. Prahlad Maharaj, he's completely dependent. He showed it the first, the second, the third time that he was tried to be killed. But there was a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth time. Srila Prabhupada, he continued. He persevered. But there were still obstacles. Till the day he left. He had to deal with the organization and immature disciples and this and that and so many things that he was constantly dealing with. So we may ask, why? And sometimes it's mind-boggling. We see great devotees go through situations like this. But Srila Prabhupada answers that question. He says sometimes he puts his pure devotees in such dangers, right? Because in that condition of helplessness, the devotee becomes more attached to the Lord. So that relationship It's hard to pinpoint exactly why certain things are happening, but that's between Krishna and the devotee. And then he answers it by saying, why? Because the more the attachment is there for the Lord, the more success is there for the devotee. So, Raganuga Bhakti is something that is ever increasing. Right? With Raganuga Bhakti, with this attachment that can grow and grow, it's that you're doing your seva better than the day before. This is an eternal relationship that is growing and building and developing and fructifying with more waves of devotion and love in the heart. Krishna's most intimate devotees, the gopis, they're always thinking that they could have done better for Krishna. So the next time that they see him, they make sure that they maybe didn't do that mistake, or maybe they added something, or added a flavor to the seva. And we aspire to come to this point because it is very easy to become complacent in our Krishna consciousness. It is very easy to justify that this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at, this is what I can do. But if we develop true humility, then we will always feel that we can do better in Krishna's service. So to conclude this verse, Srila Prabhupada, he gives a lecture in this verse, and I would like to end with his ending paragraph. He says, so fact is that even Kunti or Devaki, so intimately connected with Krishna, but they had to face so many dangers. So what to speak of others? What to speak of others? Ourselves. So when we are in danger, we should not be discouraged. We should take courage that even Kunti and Vasudev and Devaki, they were also in danger, although they were very, very intimately connected with Krishna. So we should not be disturbed by the dangers of this material world. If we are actually Krishna conscious, we should face the danger and depend on Krishna. Avashya rakive Krishna vishvasa palana. This is called surrender. That I may be in danger, but Krishna, I have surrendered to Krishna. He must save me. Keep this faith. Don't be disturbed when you are in danger, because this world is such padam padam vipadam. Every step there is danger. Just like we are walking on the street, immediately there is some pinprick, thorn, and by this pinprick or that thorn, it may become a boil. It may become dangerous. So even by walking on the street, by talking on the street, by eating our food, and in English it is said, Srila Prabhupada, this saying and this quote is very relevant to today. There is many dangers between the cup and the lip. So you should always remember that this material world is simply full of dangers. If you think that we are very safe, we are very expert, we have made this world very happy, then you are fool number one. Padam padam yat vipadam. But if you take shelter of Krishna, these dangers are nothing. That Kunti will say that. She will say vimochita. Vimochita means release from the danger. So this is the study of Krishna. That if you become Krishna conscious, a sincere servant of Krishna, don't be agitated by the dangerous condition of this material world. You simply depend on Krishna and He'll save you. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki. And it is easy to remain in this consciousness of being dependent on Krishna and fully surrendered to Krishna when we associate ourselves with devotees who are surrendered to Krishna, or that we help one another surrender to Krishna more. Because sometimes, because we are natural fault finders, it is easy to find the fault in someone else and what they should be doing and to give advice. Everyone is quick to give advice these days. But in a relationship, we can immediately see this, we can mirror it, that we're seeing this fault in someone, and maybe this is within myself, and we can help one another, and maybe they do have this fault. And with love and compassion, we can help this person with this fault, just like they can help us with our faults. So we must stay strong in Vaishnava Sangha, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, and in that way we can always be 100% Krishna consciousness. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So we'll bring it up to any reflections on this verse. Amala Ekadasi.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. It's a very nice class, very nice. Okay, so I just wanted to share something. It's a little personal, so I feel a little nervous. But this particular verse, especially the purport, I read, I don't know, maybe a few years back or something. And I found it to be very significant in my life. And I just wanted to say, because in the purport, Prabhupada speaks about how Krishna was so merciful to Kunti because her husband wasn't present. Sorry. Yeah, so I just wanted to say that you don't even have to be you don't have to be on the level of Queen Kunti. Sorry. And you don't have to be like a pure devotee or even close to that. You just what I discovered is that you just have to try. You just have to try, and Krishna is very kind. Because I read and Prabhupada has said that when a woman, if she gets whatever, if the husband is not there, that she's not supposed to remarry. And of course, it's kind of like a touchy thing because it's not easy, and and I think we don't really talk about it a lot, but I've found that over the years that I didn't say to myself that that's what I was going to do, and sometimes the opportunity would come up, but knowing that I had heard that and I had read that before about not remarrying, that was like, it would constantly, it was just kind of like burned into my consciousness, and I thought like, okay, well, not now, like that. And I feel like I want to say this because I feel, just to glorify Prabhupada and Krishna, that I feel like the reciprocation has been there. And so that if someone, and it's not like I think I'm better than anybody else or anything, and I know that I have friends, so many devotees have made a different choice, and everybody's an individual. We have to do what we feel is best for our Krishna consciousness. But I just want to say that to anyone who finds themselves in that position, that it is possible, and hopefully no one will be in that position anymore, but it's Kali Yuga, so. But it is possible, and Krishna is very kind. He's very merciful and loving, and And again, you don't have to be anywhere near the level of Queen Kunti. You just have to try to be a little serious and understand that the blessings can come through the spiritual master, and because Krishna is Krishna, anything is possible. That's all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And just to reflect on that, that wonderful personal prayer is like how Krishna says that he reciprocates according to the surrender of his devotees. And with that story of Srila Prabhupada saying 70%, I was thinking, why did he stop at 70? No, like why, and I was thinking, because if it's 50, like 50-50, no, it's so confusing. It's so confusing because you're putting yourself in the same level of Krishna, of importance, right? And so if it's like, no, just a little more than that, okay? Don't be so selfish, like a little more than that. And just like you're saying with your example, and I'm sure with the example of many devotees that maybe we're not at the pure state as you're mentioning, but just by giving that extra, just a little bit where, okay, let me remove myself from the center. Let me just put Krishna there. It's reciprocal. He says he reciprocates according to your surrender. So, you're a great example of being able to surrender at least 70, 80, 90, maybe 100. That's it. I think so. But at least to the point that you're giving Krishna more importance than your selfish needs or than your desires. And your desires are becoming one with Krishna. So thank you so much for being that example in our community. Haribol.
Prabhu, thank you for the wonderful class. You were mentioning, and the whole verse was about taking shelter. And when we are in a helpless position, we actually call out to Krishna, and Krishna wants to see that. What I notice, and what's actually is astounding to me, that even people that are not at all connected with devotional service or with any principles, that they are not even vegetarians or anything like that, but when danger comes, they call out to God, right? Like people in the war, or they don't want to lose their son in the war, their husband in the war, so they pray. And I always think how amazing that is. It's such a natural thing that even no matter how covered over you are, but you can never actually extinguish that from the soul, that the taking shelter of God. So you can never separate it from, no matter how covered over you are, in a certain condition you actually take shelter of. There is a God. No?
Actually, that was a point that was in my notes, but I didn't mention, was that, the 4 reasons why someone comes to Krishna, right? There's the, what is it, for wealth? Distress. So all of these situations, and like you're saying, in a distressful situation, it's natural to want to call out for Krishna. And what is even more inspiring is that, and in this verse, is that devotees who have surrendered to Krishna, that they're in this distressed situation, but they're not pointing blame or feeling that I'm not deserving of this or I'm deserving of something else. It's completely acceptance. It's acceptance of the relationship with Krishna. And like I was mentioning, the inner workings of this relationship is hard for us to pinpoint the exact reasons. Is it that the devotee needed to be more helpless to themselves? Maybe. I mean, for us, they're great devotees. They're already surrendered. And like Krishna does magic with one stride. He does many things. But it's just amazing to see that someone in that condition, in that spiritual realization, that can maintain this mood of gratitude, even though her grandsons were just murdered, even though there was a weapon hurled at her other, great grandson, right? So thank you for mentioning that, because it is a natural thing for the jiva in distress situation to call for Krishna. But and then we want to even go beyond that, which is even if we're more spiritually realized, we can keep that humble mood.
Haribol. Haribol. I'm full of gratitude for having you in my life. Thanks to your mother. I was just thinking that, Krishna is so amazing that in our own life, like, we're looking at a live movie of Krishna's mercy. It's a channel. You can tune into a channel, no? 108. Because we're seeing right here, right now, in front of our eyes, how Krishna never forgets his devotees. I was thinking about Vidyananda Prabhu. Vidyananda Prabhu came to our home, I will say maybe 20 years ago, 18 years ago. He was making this video about what do you want to tell people 100 years from now. I don't know if you participated in that video, but he was making a video asking the devotees of Krishna, why you want to tell people 100 years from now? I was very fortunate that he came to our home and he recorded Matasachi before she left the planet, and now he's gone. But Jivaram Swami says something pertaining to what you say, Mataji, that even though Matasachi was not a famous guru, or she was just a regular mother, she got the attention of Krishna because of her sincerity, and she could see him even before departing. So I'm just realizing in this class is such an amazing class. I would like these classes to go like Rana Swami classes, that they go like for 4 hours. Do you want more? Yeah. But my realization right now is that Shyamali, what is the perfection of life? And the perfection of life is to live this kshetra, remembering Krishna. So we're seeing, or at least I'm seeing in my own life, but this kind of example of my beautiful Matasachi, and then Vidyananda Prabhu leaving the body, the devotees chanting for his Shyamali. Who did all those arrangements? So Krishna himself, he's always there for us. And I just have to say it that, we're watching how Krishna took Shyamali back home, back to Godhead, surrendered by beautiful devotees. Vidyananda Prabhu also left, how they left in perfect life. That's a perfect life. So I just want to say that we're so lucky to be in this community here, because we're living Gaura Lila life. You don't have to go nowhere, it's right here, the lordships are here, miracles are happening every day. I was for 15, so many years working in Orlando, busy. Now because of this pandemic, this is like a mercy. So right now I'm home, and I get to do more service to Krishna. I was realizing that. I remember when I came to this community, the temple was little. I used to do the Sunday feast, talking about when Kish was a kid 32 years ago. And after all this time passes, now I see myself back into the kitchen, working the Sunday feast again, and I'm just full of gratitude, so I just want to share that we're seeing devotees in our own life achieving perfection. So we're in the right track. That's how I call it, the cruise of love, Srila Prabhupada Ishkan. Even the sweepers Even I was just thinking that too, that when Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, they were doing these amazing kirtans, even envious people, they will get flooded by the holy name and they will obtain prema for Krishna. So even though we're not even, at least myself, I don't feel like I'm 1% surrendered. Even though I'm not even 70%, but the mercy of Srila Prabhupada is so much that somehow or other we're here. Not even 70, and I feel like 1%, but I just want to say that Srila Prabhupada is so merciful that he's taking us all back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki, yeah.
In contrast, we have a question here. In contrast to Pran Govinda's reading from Anuttama about Srila Prabhupada taking all precautions for his service.
What was that? Sorry, say that again.
In contrast to Pran Govinda's reading from Anuttama about Srila Prabhupada taking all precautions for his service and then stating that we should always see all dangers as sent by Krishna for our benefit, can you expand on these two concepts?
Well, voluntarily putting yourself in a situation that can cause harm or risk in your life, it will be difficult to see that as service to Krishna. Because, the Vaishnava behavior is that one shouldn't take unnecessary risks. Like, for example, Srila Prabhupada didn't, with his disciples or encourage them to go skydiving or different things like that. It's just being engaged in Krishna's service, and while being engaged, if there's dangers that come, we try to protect ourselves as much as possible, and we continue to try to do our seva. So, for example, with this the Alachua temple, all the temples all around the world were shut down. But there was many conversations. But the seva needs to continue. The deities need to be taken care of. The pujas need to continue. Somehow it was figured out how to continue, even with the dangerous situation. Where sometimes in the pujari room or other places that maybe you're exposed, but you figure out the safest way to do things, and you continue to serve Krishna, but you don't foolishly do so. You don't put yourself in harm's way. I don't think that that is conducive to a spiritual life.
Yeah, it's not like, running in front of a truck makes you Krishna conscious, but, the relationship's there, like with Queen Kunti, and then if the danger comes, it accentuates the relationship. You become, sometimes you go, like guys, you go through some war experience or something, and you bond, a band of brothers, so it's not an exact parallel.
With Queen Kunti's example, actually, I was thinking was that it's interesting. It's not that she's looking for danger, but it's interesting because she asked for it. Well, in the sense she asked for it, but she's saying, Krishna, if you put me in a dangerous situation, if you like, because I remember you again and again, but she's not going, hit me with your Brahmastra,
Yeah. She says, if you like, and it's like my relationship, the whole focus of that conversation is my relationship with you. I want to intensify it. I'm not just, oh, look at me, I'm a masochist, I must be an advanced devotee.
Yeah, right. But Queen Kunti's mood is a beautiful mood that she's ready to be in a situation where she can think of Krishna, but she's not artificially putting herself in harm's way so that Krishna can come save her. She's also keeping that on Krishna's will. That's all in Krishna's control because she's not trying to put it in her control. So I think just following Queen Kunti's example answers that question. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.